around this time a year ago, a little bit after the playoff loss in Orchard Park, I was part of a small group of reporters that was invited by the Steelers to the South Side to meet with Art Rooney to talk about, well, really anything related to the franchise. And within that conversation, the following words were spoken by Rooney. I'm going to read this to you directly. There's an urgency. I think everybody, myself, Mike, guys who've been on the team for a while, everybody, we've had enough of this. It's time to get some wins. It's time to take these next steps. End quote. He was talking about the playoffs and winning in the playoffs. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of the other two teams in town that I cover, the Penguins and the Pirates, and I hope you'll check those out as well. Steelers versus Ravens is 8 p.m. Saturday night, M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. And that meeting will represent the first chance for Mike Tomlin and those players to do something regarding that admonition from the man who owns the team. Now, I'm bringing this up now before the game because I don't want to be accused of conveniently bringing it up after the game, since it's really, theoretically anyway, a very big deal. Wherever it is that you happen to work, chances are excellent you don't want to make a habit of disappointing the boss, especially when the boss speaks publicly as strongly as I felt Rooney did in that room that day. He didn't have to get specific. He didn't have to say, we need to start getting some wins in these playoffs. He didn't need to reference Mike Tomlin by name. He didn't need to reference those players who've been here a while because everybody knows that he's talking about TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, and a couple others. But he did that. And it was, or at least it felt, at that table to be methodical. It's not like he wouldn't have known the issue was going to come up. He also said that day of Tomlin, when asked just about, his level of faith in Tomlin going into the future, he said that we believe Mike can get us there. If I didn't believe Mike could get us there, he wouldn't be here. Again, period, end quote. So once more, theoretically, that should be a big deal. Thing is, it wasn't at the time, and it really doesn't feel like it is now either, does it? Who's bringing this up anywhere? Who's bringing up something that Rooney said a year ago? Or for that matter, something similar that he said a couple of years ago, though not as specific? Nobody. And the reason for that, at least I think I can surmise, is that nobody thinks anything will be done. And honestly, I'm not even just talking about Tomlin here. I'm talking about the figurative mountains that had to be moved just to get rid of Matt Canada. A visibly incompetent offensive coordinator who was embarrassing himself Sunday after Sunday after Sunday and had been here for years and multiple quarterbacks, and one of them was Ben Roethlisberger. It didn't matter. Visibly incompetent. It took forever to take action on him. My reporting at the time was that the decision was made by Tomlin. I believe that. I also believe that Rooney was very much on board with this decision. But wow, years and years before anything came of it. That, I think, is why nobody's expecting there to be any real repercussion for the way the Steelers are performing now, presuming they continue to perform in a similar way Saturday night. And think of it this way. The Steelers are only the fourth team in NFL history to lose their final four games heading into a playoff. And if you think about it, that kind of makes sense because, playoff teams tend to not lose four in a row, much less right at the end, because you would have had to be really good to clinch the spot. and then really bad to do all the rest. And that's just not something that's often seen in any sport. But I can't think of a more damning scenario for everybody involved. This isn't just about Tomlin. I know half of everyone loves to make it that way. This is about every single participant to date, with the possible exception of Chris Boswell. But everyone's been part of a team that showed the football world they had enough talent to go 10-3, that they had enough people, that they had enough skill, strength, and speed, and savvy, and everything to win 10 of their first 13 games. And, by the way, to have, at the time, a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense, depending on your metric of choice, only to spiral out of control from that point onward. Look, if you're a coach whose roster stinks and you lose a lot, you're not going to take as much heat as someone who's currently going through this. Golden example right now, Arthur Smith, 3 years of next to nothing in Atlanta. Here he is a year later, his phone's ringing off the hook for head coaching vacancies. Why? Because everyone says the same thing. Well, I mean, he was in Atlanta. What do you think was going to happen? He was just going to be the first guy since Matt Ryan's heyday to lead the Falcons to some kind of glory. Similar conversations to what we have about Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky and their time quarterbacking the Bears. Wow, they were in Chicago. When you see what the Steelers did, not speculation, not projection, what they actually put onto the football field for 13 games, not least of whom was a legit DPOY candidate in TJ, and then see them fall apart, yeah, that's pretty rough. And that requires very real accountability, not just of the head coach, not just of the coordinators, but even of the player group, of the priorities that you have within your payroll, how you distribute your salary cap. And just as an infinite example within that, why you're paying Minkah Fitzpatrick some $20 million a year to be a center field backstop for you. That kind of thing. The accountability list is long. It's not just, oh, I don't like that guy, I want him out of here. It's about actual accountability, and actual accountability has to run all the way through the organization. And if you get to the point where this team loses 5 in a row after being 10-3, then Rooney's words need to translate into a whole lot more than checking a yes or a no on the box. When we come back, J1Q. This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Today's J1Q comes from Mike, and he says, DK, in the past 15 Super Bowls, 28 of the 30 participants have had top 10 offenses. The two that did not were the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes just last year, and they were number 11. And then the other with an aging Peyton Manning in Denver in 2015, and the unbelievable defense. And, of course, the fumble by the Steelers out in Denver. Okay, we're not going to talk about that. Mike continues. Conversely, only 18 of the 30 teams had top 10 defenses. The data feels pretty clear that you need an excellent, not an adequate, offense. Do you think Mike Tomlin believes a well-executed offense with his approach could be in this realm, or does he truly not care about offense despite the data? Mike, I'm rarely in the camp that subscribes to looking at Super Bowl participants and saying, oh, you have to be this in order to get there. Because every team takes on its own identity, even within one facet of football. For example, everyone says, well, it's a passing league. You got to be able to pass to get to the Super Bowl. Okay, but the top two running teams in the NFL are the Ravens and Eagles. They're pretty good. There's a really good chance, at least a decent chance, that it'll be a Ravens-Eagles Super Bowl. Does that mean running's more important than passing? Not necessarily, not even to those offenses. So you can do that. You can pick things out and say, this is a requirement. This is what you need to show at the gate in order to get into the Super Bowl. It's generally an oversimplification, and I say that respectfully. To your other point, does Tomlin care about offense? Well, yeah, of course he does. I mean, let's not start getting weird with this stuff. I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that to everybody. I get everybody's mad at him. Everybody's being critical of him. I've been really critical of him. And having covered his entire career, I can honestly say that over the past couple of weeks, I've been as critical of him as I can recall ever being. It's not because I don't like him. It's not because I've turned on him. And God knows it's not because I've seen the light. Don't ever send me something like that. It's because he is really, really, really struggling right now. And most unfortunately, a lot of those struggles that we're seeing now are symptomatic of other struggles that he's had, and even a broader struggle to just find a way to get this team to have postseason success. So yeah, keeping this real, of course he cares about the offense. What he doesn't do, and this is the point that I have always made about him, he doesn't see the game through that prism. He sees it through what he needs to do defensively to win it. And you might never see a more glaring example of that than the game that just happened. I don't have to wonder about this. He said this in the press conference. He said that he wanted the Steelers to run the ball and run up the time of possession, partly because he wanted to preserve their identity, as if that matters, and partly because he wanted to keep Joe Burrow off the field. And in the same sequence that he said those things, he used the phrase, "We do not live in our fears." That's exactly what that is. He was fearing Burrow's effect on his defense. He was adjusting his offense to what he thought his defense needed. So when I say that he sees the game through the prism of his defense, that's what I mean. Not that he doesn't care if his team scores points. He's not psychotic. He didn't figuratively climb Mount Everest and back to try to get the absolute most he could out of Antonio Brown because he doesn't care about offense. He obviously cares about offense. It's just the way he sees the game. It's the way he places his own priorities because of what he believes is necessary to win the game. If there's anything at all that's actually dated about his philosophy, it's probably that, the whole defense wins championships thing. I would more safely describe it, Mike, as just misplaced or misapplied, I think is a better term, priority. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers, and we'll be back tomorrow with the things that I'd like to see before I hit the road right back to Maryland.